Hi, this is Shari with Lesson 2, Planning for a Journey. Where do you want to go? If you're like most boys and girls, vacation time is the most exciting time of the year, especially if it means a cross-country trip. Oh, isn't it thrilling to camp in the high mountains or swim in the Pacific Ocean or see the sights of Mexico City? You meet new people, often people who are different from you, people who speak with a strange accent and have customs which are unusual and fascinating. You enjoy interesting foods which are much different from those you eat at home. Oh, there's so much fun packed into every day that you don't want to think of the time when your vacation must end. But not all vacations are that exciting. The really good ones have been carefully planned, probably for weeks or even months ahead of time. Imagine this kind of vacation. Your parents failed to plan. Well, first of all, because the car tires are old and thin, you blow out a tire and you're stranded for hours in the scorching heat. Later, you run out of gas and you walk with Dad for 3 miles to find a service station. The next day, because you left your map at home, you get on a wrong road and you go 100 miles out of the way. And that night you have to sleep in the car because you have no motel reservations. And finally, just when you're getting where you had most wanted to go, you discover you're out of time and money and you have to start back home without really seeing anything. Oh, no, that trip was no fun. In fact, staying at home would have been great fun by comparison. You can see that the difference in a fun vacation and one that isn't fun is planning. When you set goals and plan carefully, everything has a good chance of turning out the way you want it. But if you don't plan, you have to live with confusion and disappointment. Well, what's true in planning a trip also is true in planning to reach any goal that's important to you. All your life is like a journey. Some people are just wanderers. They're like a drifter who moves from town to town, going nowhere in particular, having no goals in life, not wanting to be anybody or to accomplish anything. Well, what happens to this sort of person? He never does much that's worthwhile, for himself or for anybody else. Oh, and he does lead a miserable life. He's unhappy, and he makes everybody around him unhappy. Whatever you need in life, you can have, but only if you first of all decide what you want. Next, you have to decide that what you want is worth having, that it's worth planning and working for. Everything worthwhile will cost you something. Then you take action. You plan carefully how you will reach your goal, and don't give up until you are successful. Do you want to make good grades in school? Do you want to have more friends or be friends with a certain person? Is there something special you want to buy or a good habit that you want to form? Do you want to be stronger or more attractive? Do you want to be an outstanding athlete? What do you need? What do you want? If your goal is worthwhile, you can reach it. You can get what you want. The question is, how do you get what you want? First, you make a decision. You decide for sure that you really do want to reach a certain goal. Yes, you say, I'm sure that is what I want to aim for. I want to be the best player on the team, or I want to raise my grades in math. The question to ask next is, am I really willing to pay what it costs to reach my goal? What am I willing to give in exchange? Am I really ready to put in all the necessary hours of practice or study? If your answer is no, then you don't want it after all. Goals which can be reached today are called short-range goals. Others, long-range goals, require a little work or practice every day for weeks or even months. Long-range goals are for boys and girls who have stickability, who can stick with a job until it's finished. They're not for quitters. Who's the best football player you know? How do you think he got where he is? First of all, he had to want to be the best so much that he would keep on practicing after everybody else had quit. The more he practiced, the better he became. And as he became better, he received the encouragement he needed to try even harder. He began to feel what it was to be a success, and it became easier to keep practicing until he developed that toughness and skill that made him the winner he is today. In your plan of action manual, you have spaces in which you are to write in very plain language exactly what goals you want to reach. There are spaces for your goals, for staying in good health, for making friends, for doing well in school, and for other important matters in your life. Goals are sometimes hard to put into words, so you may need to ask for help from your parents or from a teenage brother or sister who's already begun working on his or her goals. Get whatever help you need to spell out very clearly with words, with pictures, or with both exactly what goals you want to reach and how you're going to reach them. This is how you begin planning and goal setting. It is the most important part. You must know exactly where you want to go if you want to be sure to get there. After this first step toward being successful, you have to be a person who takes action, and you have to decide that now is the time to start. Have you ever tossed a coin into a wishing well and wished with all of your heart that your wish would come true? If you have, you knew that it was just a game, that wishing does not get you what you want. Well, as silly as the wishing well game may seem to you, a great many people, adults as well as children, live just as though they thought wishing were enough, as though no action on their part were necessary. Other people go on one step further. They plan to do something, but thinking about it is the only thing they really get done. They're always waiting for tomorrow, or next week, or next year to begin. Of course, tomorrow never comes. We're always living in the today. Now is the time for you to start your planning and goal setting. If you start today, you will be a little closer to getting accomplished what you want tomorrow. To help you get started, your Plan of Action Manual presents several questions to be answered in each area in which you will set goals. When you answer these questions, you will see that they're not like the questions you have on tests in school. They're questions you ask about yourself. You know the answers to them already because you know yourself better than anyone else in the world. Why then should you bother to answer the questions? Because you may never have asked these questions before. By answering the questions, you'll be able to know yourself better and decide more easily what goals you want to set. Again, if you don't understand some of the questions or how to fill out the forms, ask your parents or a teenage brother or sister to help you. Remember, this isn't hard work. Actually, this is fun, and it will help you to be an active person, one who's really doing something instead of one who's always waiting for tomorrow to get started. An active person knows about roadblocks and solutions. Once you begin trying to reach a goal, you will soon find that there's always something to stand in your way, something to keep you from reaching your goal. The goal-setting forms in your plan of action call these things roadblocks. Let's think for a moment about roadblocks, huh? What would the driver of an automobile do if he were driving down the street and some object fell off a truck in front of him? Well, if it were a small object and not likely to damage his car or cause him to lose control, he might just drive right over it as though it weren't there. Or he could go around it or even take a different street to get where he wants to go. He could, of course, just stop his car and sit there feeling sorry for himself. That would be a foolish thing to do, wouldn't it? Now let's think about a different kind of roadblock. A roadblock such as Gary Simons found when he began trying to reach his goal of learning to play the piano. In fact, he found all kinds of roadblocks, some inside himself and some outside, to keep him from reaching his goal. First, Gary loved to play ball, every kind of ball, and after school there was always a gang ready to play. He also wanted to be a good ball player, so he had a conflict of goals, two goals that interfered with one another. Second, Gary's sister Evelyn was also learning to play the piano. When Gary was ready to practice, Evelyn seemed always to have just sat down. Boy, the whole thing was discouraging. Third, Gary's father was a fisherman who liked to spend days and sometimes even weeks on fishing trips, and the entire family often went with him. Oh, these trips were great fun, but they did pose a problem. After a few days away from the piano, Gary found that practicing was like starting all over again. You get the idea now of roadblocks, huh? They can be inside of you, in terms of your interests, or they can be outside situations over which you may have little control. In Gary's case, fishing trips and competition with his sister for the piano were roadblocks. But roadblocks can be overcome. Problems can be solved if you're willing to think about them and really try to find solutions or answers. This is why the goal-setting forms in your plan of action manual have one space for you to write down the roadblocks that will stand in the way of your reaching your goals, and another space in which you can list the solutions. The solution is simply how you plan to get around or over the roadblock. Let's see how Gary overcame his roadblocks. He found that by setting a definite time each day, he was able to avoid competition with Evelyn for the piano, and he still had time for playing ball. His third roadblock was a little harder to overcome, but by doubling up on practice periods and carrying some music along to study on the week-long fishing trips, he was able to solve that problem too. Get help from your parents, friends, your brothers, your sisters. Think ahead of time of the roadblocks that may keep you from reaching your goals, and then ask others to help you work out solutions. If a roadblock springs up that you didn't think of when you first set a certain goal, write it down and work it out in the same way. This kind of planning will help you to become an achiever, a person who gets things done, not a quitter who gives up the first time he has a problem. To get the most from Adventures in Growth, you should listen to each lesson once a day for 6 days, so that the tape in your cassette for this lesson will be in the proper position the next time you want to listen. Press the button marked REW on your tape player until all the tape is on the left-hand spindle. You can see the tape through that little window in your cassette. If this is the 6th time for you to listen to this lesson, and if you're ready to proceed to the next lesson, press the button marked Fast Forward on your tape player until all the tape is on the right-hand spindle. The tape will then be in the proper position when you wish to review Adventures in Growth.